Welcome back. Well, new research from National Bank points to an old theory that if a population grows too big, too fast, it can hamper overall growth rather than help it. Here's a look at our population trap by the numbers. The growth in our population is big, jumping 1.2 million last year alone, on top of an 825,000 gain in 2022 and dwarfing recent years' typical rates of immigration. That rate of growth at 3.2% is 5 times the average of our peer countries, and for some provinces, including Alberta, at 4.3%, even higher. The problem is when the economy can't absorb the new workers. A look at GDP growth per person shows an economy that is falling, not growing. The report points to a dramatically falling capital stock per person, which has collapsed to 1.5% as of 2023, as a big part of that decline. We simply don't have the savings to create enough new jobs for the new workers. Housing, of course, is one place this problem shows up. Right now, we're building only one house for every 4.2 people entering the workforce. That is a record low. It compares to the historical average of one house for each 1.8 new worker. The economists at National Bank suggest we would need 700,000 new homes a year to keep up, something we're nowhere close to. Remember, last year's new starts actually fell 7% to hit 223,000. And they suggest the ideal number of new Canadians, including non-permanent residents such as students and temporary workers, not exceed 300,000 to 500,000 a year. A lot of us might know a population trap by another name. It's a theory that goes back to Thomas Robert Malthus, who warned in the 18th century that a fast-growing population would outrun food production. Have we found a way to make Malthusian theory finally correct? Warren Lovelyy is Managing Director and Chief Rates and Public Sector Strategist at the National Bank of Canada. Thanks for being with us, Warren.
Yeah, my pleasure, Amanda. Thank you.
So in the end, Malthus was wrong because technology came along and solved some problems and population didn't grow the way he thought. Could technology also be the answer here? In other words, could there be organic economic solutions to our massive population growth?
Well, I guess there are some potential for solutions here. And to be honest, we don't want to suggest that there's no solutions to pursue in light of today's population growth. But I think the issue is we could try to treat the symptoms of extreme population growth, or we could go and attack the issue head on. And that is get population growth back on a more sustainable level, because it really is a situation now where it is outrunning our ability to easily and effectively absorb. And this isn't just a housing market issue. It's much broader than that.
And of course, that's where it gets key. We tend to think of immigration as being pro-growth and that newcomers, although there may be a period of absorption, do add to our economic growth. I think that the analysis here is that at a certain rate or size, that's not the case. And actually, we can't possibly grow enough, and it may actually detract from everybody's experience. Is that where we're at?
Kind of seems to be tipping towards that situation, Amanda. I mean, look, the economy in Canada is still growing, or was still growing in 2023. But, where it really matters for individual Canadians, individual households, we've been in contraction now for 6 quarters straight. We haven't seen any growth in our per capita standard of living in 6 years. So I think what we would try to argue is that population growth is masking some underlying vulnerabilities in the Canadian economy. It's providing perhaps a misguided signal of our economic well-being. And we're at a situation now where the levels are too high to reasonably absorb. And hence the population trap narrative that you cited.
Are there things that the government could do from a policy point of view to help address this issue?
Well, we've seen governments try to tackle, imbalances in the housing market through some tax changes to try to spur construction activity. This is really, I think, playing at the margins. The much bigger issue is getting population growth back to a level that we can more reasonably absorb. And we won't pretend to know the definitive range for that. We cited a few numbers in our report. I think what might be appropriate to do here is strike a panel of experts to advise the government on what the right level is.
Yeah, in other words, the suggested level of immigration would be well below where we are. Would you, the folks at National Bank, say this is an experiment that has failed?
Well, I think it's a policy that's gone too far. too extreme. And we don't want to suggest that immigration is bad or population growth is bad. In fact, it's not. At an appropriate level, this is one way to help generate growth in the economy. We know that that immigration and population growth can add to economies, but we're at extreme levels. We're far beyond the level, as I say, that we can reasonably absorb. And again, this isn't just an issue about rent pressure on inflation. It's much bigger than that. We really do seem to be sucking some oxygen out of the Canadian economy and distorting and maybe, complicating our ability to grow the economy on a longer term basis.
Warren, so good to have you. Appreciate your time today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Warren Lovelyy is Managing Director and Chief Rates and Public Sector Strategist at the National Bank of Canada. Immigration is only part of the population growth in Canada. In fact, non-permanent residents like students and temporary workers numbered 2.2 million in 2023. About 40% of those were temporary workers, 21% students. Well, now the federal government has student visas in its sights, suggesting a new cap on the number of foreign students going forward. Jaspreet Singh is the founder of the International Sikh Student Association. Thanks for being with us, Jaspreet.
Thanks for having me.
So obviously, student visas seem to be a target here. Is that fair to limit the number of them?
I think even right now, I was talking to students, and after the recent announcement, the general consensus in students is like they're getting thrown under the bus, because students are also suffering from issues related to housing, but just capping the number of students coming as a part of solution, they just feel like they're getting thrown under the bus.
I want to focus on the housing as well, Jaspreet, because that's a big part of the reason we're worried about the number of foreign students. Are universities and colleges inviting students to Canada without any thought about where they're going to live, and then kind of leaving students, in some cases literally on the street, but without a lot of options?
Yeah, that's a part of another problem. These institutions are inviting record number of international students. They are issuing a record number of offer letters to the students without considering the resources, the support and services, even anything related to mental health. The institutions most of them are just not thinking anything about it. Most of these institutions, especially here in GTA, who are inviting a large number of international students, they don't have even the right infrastructure to operate. And a few weeks ago, we have seen protests up there in Sudbury and North Bay, where a couple of students started protesting against the university because of the lack of information and misinformation provided by their consultant about the housing. And when the student came here, they were not able to get the accommodation around their university. And most of them have to travel from GTA all the way to Sudbury to attend their classes.
And I guess the other piece of this, Jaspreet, we hear that a lot of students have to work in order to support themselves. Is working part of the deal? In other words, is the student visa sometimes used as a way to bring people in and then employ them in jobs that we need to have filled?
I think the consultants and recruiters have a big part to play behind this, especially in back home, in those countries. Those consultants are pretty much promoting the thing that you can study along with, at the same time you guys can work and pay for your tuition fee. They also pay a big part, and even from last 2 years we have seen the situation of the economy is not that good. And it's really hard to forget the part-time jobs. It's really hard to find a full-time ones, and that also has put a strain on the students.
Not a ton of time here, but one reason, of course, international students is a good thing for Canada is they stay. People come here to study and then they settle here, and we have access to educated people who want to live in Canada. Is that the case for a lot of these students?
Ideally, this is the way it should be, but unfortunately, many of these institutions are just puppy mills. They just using international students as their revenue. Even if you look at the quality of education at these institutions, which is really bad, majority of students graduating from especially public-private institutions and they're from their satellite campuses, they're not even able to get the job in their field after spending lifetime savings of their families on their studies. They're not even able to secure jobs in their field. So this is the system is now going the way it is supposed to be.
Jaspreet, so good to have you for us. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Jaspreet Singh is founder of the International Sikh Student Association. Still ahead, the federal government is cracking down on high-interest loans. Will that leave some borrowers out in the cold? Stay with us.